Hello, my name is Blazkin, and welcome to my Raiden video. Let's start off by really quickly addressing she's not going to be your main DPS. She should be something that rotates in and deals damage while your main DPS is sort of on downtime, right? So characters like Ayaka and Eula especially can really take advantage of this because most of her damage is coming from their elemental bursts, and of course Raiden can just slot in when their bursts are up. So with that being said, let's talk about our kit a little bit. So the first thing to note is this kit, this talent. This talent is kind of one of the largest parts of her build, right? This talent is something that you need to take advantage of. It really helps her damage a lot, and of course the extra energy regen is really good. So what she does is on her E, this is basically a electro application and electro damage off field, and it'll have 100% uptime, so that's pretty good for characters like Eula and any other electro reactions you might want to do, even though electro reactions aren't the greatest. So this is pretty important. You get extra burst damage for her E, maxes out at level 9 at 0.3% per energy, and that'll be 24% at 80 energy, 18 at 60 energy, and 12 at 40 energy. So yeah, pretty good. Definitely quite a strong skill, honestly. The damage isn't particularly amazing, but the buffs are great, and of course applying electro off field and having 100% uptime is quite good. So her burst. This is where things get pretty complicated. So the first thing to note is that there is something called resolve. So what resolve is basically she can gain resolve stacks, and it increases the amount of damage she deals in her elemental burst, her initial hit and her normals in her elemental burst. So what this means is that you really want to maximize the amount of resolve you're getting so that you can deal as much damage while you're in her burst. So the way you gain resolve stacks is there's two ways. Number one is you get elemental particles, and the second way is by using other elemental bursts. So as you can see, you get extra stacks for energy consumed. So this counts for your entire party, so yeah. So basically, the point of her is to dump all the rest of your bursts and then go into her when you don't have any bursts left, and then just kind of bridge the downtime basically, yeah? And that's all it really is. Alright, so let's just jump right into some gameplay then. So this first team I'm going to be showing off here is kind of trying to use Baal as the main DPS, right? This is kind of your standard-ish taser comp with Xingqiu. I'm using Sara, of course. She's quite an excellent pairing with Baal, especially on this team. 80 energy burst, electro at C6 she passes extra crit damage to Baal. It's really quite strong. Zhong is not ideal, I just brought him because I'm lazy. But, you know, a character like Sayu or Jean would do much better. They have 80 energy bursts and they're animo, so you can shred defenses. It's definitely more ideal to run those two, but Zhong's kind of the lazy man's option, right? With that being said, this team does great, right? Abyss really stands no real chance. This team just crushes Abyss. It's really quite simple. You know, Baal is dealing the majority of the damage, so I'd argue she's the main DPS here. You can argue otherwise. You know, this is a very quick swap team comp, so a lot of action from every character. But yeah, I think Baal is doing quite well. He does a lot of damage, and it works out pretty well. Especially when you can just dump all your bursts and have a huge amount of resolve stacked up. It starts hitting pretty hard. Now, to be fair, this team comp is kind of not exactly using Baal to her strengths per se, because, you know, Baal is really good when paired with another DPS that can deal a ton of damage and then have some downtime. This team is kind of that, but it's more like you're rotating into your teammates in order to mitigate Baal's downtime, rather than Baal being the one mitigating other people's downtime. So definitely a little bit weird, but I mean it works. So yeah, if you can build this team, which I think you can, you know, 2 4-stars plus the last slot can be just a healer. This is a pretty cheap team comp, so yeah, it'll work fine. So the second team we're going to be looking at is, I think, probably Baal's most ideal team, and that's her paired with Eula. Now, disclaimer, my Eula's C6, so she's kind of crushing it, but the point of this team comp stays the same whether you're C6 or C0, right? Eula has a ton of downtime. You pop her burst, you stay in for 7 seconds normally, hold E's, whatever else, right? And then you switch out. And with that, she's got 13 seconds of cooldown. Switch into Baal. Baal's going to, you know, eat like 6-7 seconds by herself. Pretty good, you know? That's a lot of the downtime mitigated. And, you know, Baal's going to be dealing great damage, especially if you're dumping your other bursts. Eula herself is an 80 energy burst, so yeah, quite a few resolve stacks being gained, and this team comp has a ton of synergy, right? Baal's E, of course, provides Electro, so Superconduct, as well as ult damage bonus. So yeah, this team just works really well together, and it's quite clean. Now, another thing to note about this team is that, well, you're really going to be kind of switching at your main DPS between Baal and Eula. Eula is your main DPS, she's dealing way more damage than Baal, but Baal's not dealing a small amount of damage here. If you don't have Baal built, she's not going to be supporting Eula very well. So yeah, Baal's not a cheap support by any means. You do need to build her for her to really have her full value. And yeah, this team is really quite clean. It feels great to play. They really cover for each other. It's really quite a perfect pairing, honestly. You can also use Baal for Ayaka, but the problem there is that it's hard to slot Baal in anywhere because, well, there's better supports, right? You know, Mona or Xingqiu, you really want to get that freeze. Pretty important. So that's 2 slots filled. Third slot's going to be healer. Fourth slot, Kazuha is better than Baal for this team. There's no question about it. I don't think there's any argument. But you know, if you don't have Kazuha, if you don't have, you know, a great animo character, then Baal can fit into that team fine and do great. Just not the most ideal character there. Okay, so the third team we're going to be looking at here is Yoimiya. The synergy isn't really great, but the point is that Baal's one of the strongest sub DPSs, and you're gonna just bridge the downtime on Yoimiya with Baal. That's pretty much all it is. I mean, it works fine. It's perfectly adequate. But I think that you're not quite taking advantage of Baal's kit very well here. Now, if you're using somebody like Hu Tao or somebody with a very strong burst, then Baal's going to work great there. But Yoimiya's kind of got a bad burst, you know? So Baal's not going to be utilizing her full kit here. But, you know, Overload is kind of sketch, but in this current Abyss it's really not a big deal. Yeah, it works out pretty fine. I mean, Bennett and Zara are definitely doing a lot of work here as well. But yeah, I mean, Baal does what she needs to. Bridges the downtime in between each Yoimiya, right? So yeah, if you have characters like Yoimiya, Child, right? Hu Tao, all these characters that have downtime, Baal can work great. Just, you know, you're not quite utilizing Baal perfectly, but I mean, it'll definitely help your team out, no question. So, now that we've looked at her team comps, well, a couple of example team comps, as well as her role, let's go and take a look at her build. So here's my build. Looks pretty normal. Until you get to the artifacts. Yeah, I'm running attack percent for a goblet. So to explain why, we're gonna have to do some math. But before we jump into the math, I'm going to discuss weapons. In my eyes, there's only 2 real weapons worth considering on her. Engulfing Lightning is of course the first one. Her own weapon is, no surprise, excellent. This weapon's really good, there's no question about it. It's definitely her best weapon, even at R1. So yeah, if you got it, use it. Not sure if I would recommend pulling on it. That banner's kind of not pretty. But if you do have it, they're best in slot. So the only other weapon that I would consider is the catch. Now, I don't have it. I haven't done enough fishing. I haven't stolen fish from other people's worlds. I'm not above that, and I just haven't done it. Nobody lets me in. But yeah, the catch is just amazing. You'll see why it's so good when we do the math, but I wouldn't really consider other 5 stars over the catch even, unless you have them at higher refinements. But yeah, talk about that in the math portion. Alright, let's just jump right into the math. Quite a bit to talk about here. So, to begin, I'll have this link down in the description below just in case you want to look at it. Unfortunately, I didn't do any calculations here. These are all numbers. There's no actual calculations being done here. Mostly because I initially intended this just to be for reference for myself, but I thought might as well let people look at it as well. With that being said though, the calculations are being done with a couple of things staying constant. Substats? There are none. I'm not calculating any substats, which means that these numbers will be completely useless to you. These numbers are more so a guide to look at the damage differences between each piece rather than an actual recommendation. What you should run on your character is of course up to you. You should go look at your pieces, calculate your damage, and decide with that. Now with that in mind, of course her best in slot is going to be 4-piece Severed Fate. There's no question about it. It's not very hard to figure out. With that in mind, I do have the Severed Fate bonuses all calculated in. Now what I do not have is her elemental skill. Her elemental skill also increases elemental burst damage, and that's not calculated in. The reason why is because, well, guess what? We don't even need to calculate that in to show that attack percent has some real merit here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just get started with the numbers. Skyward Spine. I really want this to be good, but it's just not. So let's just move on. Here's her weapon. So here are the damage bonuses at R5. So these numbers are numbers in a vacuum, not considering the goblet basically. And as you can see, attack percent is barely better than ER. So, cool. And at R5, ER is just better than attack percent. Now, the reason why is because, well, ER is giving you attack percent already. So, yeah, that's basically it. You're getting diminishing returns with attack sands with really high ER in the weapon. So, yeah. As you can see with the attack percent goblet, ER sands wins. Electro goblet, of course attack percent is going to win because ER sands is running into some diminishing returns here. With that being said, let's look at the star weapon, the catch. At R5, of course, it's free, you know, everybody can get it, so we're going to be calculating at R5. Nobody has it at R5 right now, well, maybe people do, but you would have had to steal a lot of warholds worth of fish. So, here are the numbers. As you can see, it's a landslide victory for attack sands. Even with an attack percent goblet, attack percent is still more damage. Now, of course, you have to consider that your ER is going to be kind of low, but I doubt you'll have too much trouble keeping your burst up with 200% ER. You know, and of course with substats you'll probably have, you know, 220, 250, whatever it might be. And yeah, attack percent's just going to be better. Now taking a look at the goblet, let's move on. Yeah, as you can see, in a vacuum, attack percent is going to win. Even at R5. which makes sense, you know. Electro damage isn't giving ER, so the weapon's not getting any real benefit from it. Now, when we take a look at the sands, here's where things get interesting. Attack percent sands, numbers are very close between electro percent and attack percent. Now R5, they're not quite as close, but they're still pretty close. ER sands. As you can see, attack percent's quite a bit ahead, and even at R5, attack percent is still slightly ahead. So, yeah, that's something to consider. Now then, the catch. We've already discussed it. Attack percent is going to be the most damage. Attack percent goblet's going to crush electro damage. Just how it is. Now then, here's some overall damage numbers. It's important to note that there are two values. There are two values in this graph as well. One is the straight up damage, and then the other one is damage after burst, because the weapon gives you extra ER after burst. So this is more so relevant to her normals after her burst, and this is relevant to her initial hit. As you can see, Skyward Spine, and by the way, I'm considering the crit rate and crit damage as well. Now the numbers I'm running is 150% crit damage. That's quite a bit. My build doesn't have that much, but for a very ideal build, that's pretty, you know, good number to hit. So I'm using 150. These numbers are all calced with 150 crit damage in mind, and of course I'm converting crit rate to crit damage at a 2-to-1 ratio, so at R1, Skyward Spine loses to the catch. Yeah, that's pretty sad. Now, there's something to note, and that's that there are no substats, so, you know, Skyward Spine could catch up with a more attack percent, because it's got higher base attack, but yeah, that's kind of sad. Homa's where things get interesting. The best build is attack percent and electro. However, if you do this, you will have like no energy recharge. You're going to be at like 150%. That's like pretty bad. So I would say the more realistic build is ER attack, and at R1, yeah, it's worse than the catch. Not by much, but it is. Attack percent electro of course beats the catch, but no ER, kind of sketch, yeah. Now then, her own weapon. As you can see, before the burst, it's behind Homa, but better than the catch. And at R5, it's pretty good. It's really strong. Here's the damage increase from R1 to R5, 20% extra damage. Pretty sizable. That's about as good as it gets, you know. The only other characters that really have this much of a damage spike with refinement is like Homa Hutao, Homa Zhong, right? But yeah. And after the burst. Yeah, these are pretty big numbers. Pretty large disparity between engulfing lightning and every other weapon after the burst. So yeah, that's pretty good. And as you can see, the damage spike here is even higher. So yeah, definitely worth using engulfing lightning. It's definitely her best weapon, but the catch is pretty good. No real reason to pull for the weapon in all honesty. As you can see, ER and attack percent is going to be your highest damage. ER and electro is very close though. So with the right substats, this could catch up. And something else to note here, same sort of deal. This is fairly close, so with the right substats, this could be better. But with that being said, that's all I got for the math. Let's move on. So hopefully I've justified my build of energy recharge and attack percent. But yeah, her numbers are pretty good, you know. My build's not the most amazing build in the world, and she hits pretty hard, so yeah, pretty good. Now, as for talent priority, I think that her burst is the way to go, of course, for her damage. This increase isn't really enough to justify bringing her skill up before her burst, so definitely bring her burst up first, and then her skill, and then if you really want, you can bring up her normals as well, but yeah, you're probably not going to be using her normals very much, so it's not the most worth it. So to close out the video here, let's just talk about Baal and a little bit of a word of caution. Baal is a sub DPS. If you're using characters like, say, even Hu Tao is probably selfish, well, she's definitely selfish enough to really make Baal not a great option for her, right? I know I talked about her having downtime, but her downtime is mitigated by Xingqiu, so Baal is not really the best option there. Other characters like Gan Yu, for example, even like Diluc, right? These characters don't really have downtime. You're not really switching them out too much, so Baal is not going to be great on those teams. On the other hand, if you're running characters like Eula, right, like Ayaka even maybe, she's really going to have a lot of value. So whether or not you pull for her is really based on what DPS you're using. If you need a sub DPS, she's really good. If you don't, then she's not going to be very helpful, right? So because of that, I will say that she's difficult to place. Now, for characters like Eula, Baal is really a game changer. It makes it so those teams are no longer really completely burst teams, but they have a lot of consistency and they can just last for a very long time. Baal is also one of the best batteries in the game. She produces an enormous amount of energy. So if you need a lot of energy on your team, there's really no better character than Baal. With all of that being said, Baal is really good at what she does, but she's not really a universal character, so you really need to understand whether or not you need her before you pull. So, for now, Baal is very niche, but I don't personally expect it to stay that way. I think that in the future, there's going to be a lot of characters that are going to be very burst oriented, and you know, they might necessitate a Baal. Well, maybe not necessitate, but at least very much encourage Baal to be used in that team comp. I think Baal is going to have a lot more of a, you know, broad usage in the future, but for now, she's quite niche. Now, don't let my speculation, you know, scare you into pulling for Baal. That's a bad idea. Don't do it. But I'm just saying, she's probably going to be more useful in the future. As a Eula main, Baal is quite amazing. Like, seriously, she's so good for Eula. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely recognize that she might not be very useful for every single player. Yeah, that's all I have to say about Baal. Like the video, and sub to the channel if you're interested in more content like this. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.